Welcome to the PDX Music Business Forum. My name is Jason Fellman, and do a little house cleaning here real quick. First of all, for those of you who have never been to one of these before, this is the live version of something that exists online called the PDX Music Business Forum. This is a program that Chris Young from Vortex Music Magazine and I have put together over the last couple years, and the whole idea is to provide free and all ages sessions where folks can come, get together, learn about best practices for the DIY musician, for folks who are trying to obviously build up their artistic careers and they're looking for a little bit of guidance, and also create an opportunity for folks to meet from across the music scene. So we do these, about once every quarter or so, and so if you haven't joined the PDX Music Business Forum, it's a group on Facebook that I recommend getting in there. We post other content from time to time. Most times, and this time is no exception, in the current issue of Vortex magazine, we have complimentary content that is tied in with these sessions that we're doing. And in this last issue, we've got So You Want to Record at Home. So if you haven't grabbed your free copy of Vortex, we definitely recommend grabbing one of those before you get out of here, because there's always good stuff in here. Also, I want to thank Doug Furr for letting us do these here so much. Yeah, give it up for these guys. Coming in early on a Sunday. They have a show after this, in fact, so the fact that they let us come and do these here is obviously a great benefit to the community, so we're really appreciative of this excellent venue for doing that, as well as our various community partners who help us spread the word. Before we introduce the panelists, I want to take about 5 minutes to introduce you to some new folks here who were just here for the last session for the first time here from AudioGlobe. One of the requests we've been getting over the last couple years is, hey man, I can't make it down there, but I sure would love to participate somehow. And in partnership with AudioGlobe, we're now able to webcast these live, as well as have them online for later consumption. So if you ever can't make one, now you know there's going to be a way to do that. Also, because of today's topic, segueing, since we are talking about creating compelling audio and visual content, we wanted to give them about 3 or 4 minutes here just to tell you a little bit about their streaming and what they've been doing, because it's a model that I think a lot of musicians are going to be encountering here, if you haven't already, about finding ways to create additional revenue and grow fan bases through live streaming. So real quick, let me invite John up here just to talk a couple minutes about AudioGlobe, and then we'll get a panel up here. Please give it up for John, everybody.
Well, thanks, Jason. I totally appreciate that. And Chris, I want to appreciate you, tell you how much we appreciate for letting me come up and speak. My name is John JOYE, and I'm with a company called AudioGlobe. We're actually streaming this right now. And at our core is high-quality content. I want to talk to a little bit about why I'm here myself. And my first passion was music. I'm actually a drummer, and I remember when I was a kid riding my bike like 3 miles to drum practice, because I just wanted to be I wanted to catch up to where everyone else was at, because I started a little late. So I was rehearsing and trying to become a good drummer, and joined a band finally, and we played some really good gigs. But one of the things that we struggled with was we didn't know everything else about what it took to become successful as a band. So we broke up. And I decided to go to college, and I studied computer engineering. And there I became an entrepreneur, and that's when I came up with the concept of AudioGlobe, where AudioGlobe is a company that's trying to build a entertainment network for the next generation fan. We have our own technology that we're working on, as well as third-party platforms, and creativity to drive a large number of live events monthly. So, with that being said, AudioGlobe, we believe every artist deserves to be heard, and now. That's why we went on this mission of high-quality live content. So I'm really passionate about this topic. I'd like to bring on my partner, Tom Fortune. He's someone I met about 10 years ago who has become the technology guru and business guy to help us get to the point where we're at.
I'm sitting here so I can see the slide. Sorry.
So the thing that AudioGlobe's philosophy is rapid, agile, and affordable, high-quality content. So when you ask yourself, what is that? Well, our philosophy is live. We believe quality is actually what's going on out in the real world. So that's one of the angles to our philosophy. And the other one is it all starts with audio. If you have poor audio, the video is really important. But if you have poor audio, the video doesn't really work.
Yeah, it becomes unwatchable.
Our team, that's one of the core to how we achieve high quality. And I'd like to introduce my team real quick. We got Josh, who's one of our camera guys back here. Kevin, our sound guy. Sam's our director. And Brett is a new guy in training. So we're always trying to add new leaders to our team.
One other concept I like to bring up here is that you can create great content, but if you really want to scale it, it needs to be affordable, especially at the community level. It's just impossible to do $10,000 gigs every time you turn around and want to record. So it's a really important concept here.
So once you have high quality live content, what do you do? It's kind of what I mentioned earlier when I was in a band. We loved playing, but we didn't know anything else. So go ahead and move to the next slide. There's a lot of stuff that you need to do to become successful as a band. So the AudioGlobe solution is accessibility. So live streaming, that's what we're doing right here. We believe in capturing the entire event because that actually brings the community together, and it brings the bands that are playing together to become one voice.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that a little bit. So what happens is if you just record one performance of a show here with the band and a show over here with the band, it becomes disconnected, kind of like all the other streaming services you see. But when you connect the events together with the bands together, now you actually are creating a community of artists that are playing together, and it makes more sense to the fans that are actually listening to it.
One of the key pieces to our technology is revenue sharing. So as we ramp up this concept called livescription, where you can subscribe to a live event, it automatically distributes the royalties and revenues. Go to the next slide. So why is this important? Well, it can uplift the entire community. That's one thing that we're really excited about. And one thing that I've always been kind of a rebel, I always like to challenge the status quo, and we believe that if we can get this thing really going, it creates a fair playing field for everyone. And that's one of my really core passions is changing the status quo and giving everyone an opportunity. It sustains the artist, and it creates this like all you can kind of eat for live events where you put $10 in and you get all this great content out there. So,
and it establishes your community. So for example, as we move forward in Portland, this aggregate content will be delivered across globally, but it'll represent Portland as a community. So it's very important. It kind of creates a scene Portland now has a music scene that is now digital versus just having to come here and go to all the venues to find out what that scene really is.
So I want to thank you, and hopefully everybody enjoys the forum.
Appreciate you guys doing this at no charge for us as well, so that everybody can see it. Thank you. All right, let's bring the gang out here. Fire up the panel. Fellas, let's do this. All right, we've got on the panel, looks like Farnell Newton, Kevin Hahn, Aaron Coulter. Come on out, guys. There's a pretty good chance that if you're involved in the Portland music community, if you haven't interfaced with one of these three guys yet, you will before it's all over, because they pretty much touch every element of the music scene at some point. I'll have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves. I'll start with Kevin. Kevin Hahn is the owner of Opal Studio and a well-established musician here in Portland in his own right. Kevin, maybe just take a minute or two just giving some context to who you are and what you do.
So I run a Opal Studio here in Portland, probably doing that over 20 years now. God, man. I've been fortunate to work just about do everything as far as recording, like producing records and working with bands all over the world. And
some of the folks you've worked with,
sure,
Scorpions.
Like, I've been like Scorpions, or recently like anybody from Poison Idea to singer-songwriters. Paul Gilbert, yeah, there you go.
And me.
And Jason Fellner.
Right on. We've got Aaron Coulter with us from Banana Stand Media. Aaron, yes, Banana Stand. Tell them a little bit about where you're coming from.
Me and my buddy Louie started an independent live recording thing out of our basement about 10 years ago, and since then we've put out almost 100 albums, maybe 200, almost 300 music videos, and do some shows and stuff, but mostly just work with local acts that we think deserve a documentation.
And then we have Farnell Newton. I was joking around. Yeah, give it up for Farnell. So I was joking around when we first announced the panel on Facebook that Farnell is from everything, and I think that's actually not an exaggeration. Farnell, give us the abridged version of what you're into.
My name is Farnell Newton. I'm a trumpeter, a family man. I'm just a doer. I do whatever that needs to be done and get done. If something needs to happen, why wait for someone else to do it? So I do it. I'm also at Marmoset Music. I'm in the A&R department. Repertoire and roster is my official title, and I try to have my hands in everything: soul, funk, jazz, hip-hop, and more in Portland.
All right. So as we move forward, one thing worth mentioning here is that we encourage you guys to ask questions. You know, I usually fire up a few questions for the panel, and then I usually don't ask any more questions the entire time because you guys tend to take over. We have a microphone over next to the stage, so as we're going, even if it's right away, you can hop up to the mic and we'll get your questions in as well. And I'm going to start out with one more really kind of for the whole group. You know, so we call this how to make great or compelling audio-visual content. I think the first question one has to ask is, what exactly does that mean? So I'd be curious just to hear sort of in everybody's, own words, when you think of, like, what makes something a great piece of content to share, what exactly does that mean? What is a good piece of content? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Charlie, I can always count on you, man.
It's got to resonate with the audience on an emotional level.
Emotional level. Well, I like that.
I think of it as impact.
Impact.
You know, like when I'm working on something, like, is this going to have impact, and just really, you want it to be compelling. I mean, of course, like
It actually brings up
you want to grab you.
A side point around that is that you have to think about when you're creating, whether it's audio or video or graphics or whatever, is that unlike 20 years ago when we didn't have as much internet content and everything, it was a lot easier to stand out. And now, of course, there's so much content. You have to imagine if you're putting something up out there for people to learn about you as an act, is that going to stand out amongst all the other types of contents? Other thoughts on this? What makes something a great piece of content?
I mean,
meaningful to the target audience in particular, right? Got to reach the right people, and it's got to make sense to them.
Yes, and it just has to have a connection. For me, emotional connection is a great thing. I don't know how many times I've seen a band and they're just on there. I'm like, how do you expect people to connect with you? So, and that's what I look for when I check out bands and artists and material, flyers, posters.
I think it's honestly anything that anyone gives a fuck about and will take 2 minutes to listen to at this point. I mean, there's so much content in general, news, videos, games, whatever. Like, if you can take 2 minutes to actually listen to a song or sometimes half a song or half a video, like, that's unfortunately kind of a win in our culture these days. But the point about having a story, having an emotional connection, I think, is really helpful. It's something we hear from a lot of bands that are just starting out when they're trying to go to a label, press, they're going to write about any band, they want to hear a story about it. But to give you an example, there's a label in town called Salel Sounds. A guy named Chris Kirkley runs it. Does a lot of music out of Northern Africa, and there was an artist that he had wanted to work with. That artist is in kind of a remote village, doesn't speak English, doesn't have wireless connection. So he had a kid that had a cell phone that had WhatsApp, and they recorded this guy playing guitar with a couple like percussion instruments, and they just held up the cell phone into WhatsApp, texted that over to Chris, and he put it up on Bandcamp in the same day. So I listened to that whole album. It doesn't sound great. It sounds awful, really. But it was cool, and it was neat to be like, wow, this guy thousands of miles away recorded this today, and here I am hearing it 6 hours later. So.
Okay, awesome. So real quick, let's just get this question out of the way right now, because if there's anything that is debate-worthy on this topic, this is probably it. Audio-video quality, when it comes to creating a piece of content that's compelling. How important is it? Does that matter anymore? Is it?
It depends on the genre. So if you're like, so for instance, like sort of the lo-fi thing, like if you're Robert Johnson, it would sound weird if it was like, like super high fidelity. But if you're doing like EDM music or something, you can't have it sound like it's coming out of a telephone and feel the bass on that,
Well, and Aaron, you had mentioned that there was the last content reference that the audio was particularly poor quality, I guess you would say, or maybe the content was, yet it was still compelling. So how do we reconcile that?
I think it really kind of depends on what you want to try and do. I mean, the first album that we recorded, we stuck like podcast microphones around a room in our basement, and the band at the time didn't have a proper album, and so they were like, well, this is our album now. That band doesn't exist anymore. Honestly, most of the bands that we've recorded don't really exist. So it depends on what you want to do and how long you want that content to live. There's a young rapper out of Eugene, and she's blowing up. She went on World Star with like millions of views because she just did a freestyle on her phone. Obviously, she's going to go into a proper studio and record hopefully a great album that's going to last for like 10, 20 years. But yeah, what are you trying to do? Are you just trying to get people to recognize you, or are you trying to create something that, again, 10, 20 years from now, you can look back and say, I'm really proud of this, and regardless of who listens to it or who bought it, that you're still proud of what you did and the work you put into it?
Yeah, it also depends on the genre, but it also depends on the technology. Like hearing an artist who has no connection to, the same language, technology, and stuff. I mean, that's a story right there where they just held up a phone and recorded it. Like for me, in the jazz world, I feel like there's a certain threshold you can navigate in. If you go below that or way too produced, your fans are not going to really want to connect to it as they usually do, because they expect a certain thing in that genre. But it also depends. Like, nowadays with technology and phones, you got Win who just has their camera taking a video. But nowadays, I mean, people are making videos, great production videos from their iPhones and such, So it just all depends on what you're trying to do and the what you call it, the market and the people. If you're on social media, you're just going to use your phone. If you're trying to make something that's more compelling, you're going to go into the studio. For me, I'm constantly like trying to lo-fi the hell out of my music these days and make it snap, crackle, and pop and give it that nostalgic, you put on a Miles Davis record. But at the same time, I like to record stuff that's real clean and hitting. But it all just depends on who I'm trying to. But I feel like if you get your fans, if you have a certain fan base and you've earned these fans, they're going to love you no matter what, unless the shit is just awful. Then it's just like they don't want to deal with you, But besides that, they're going to love you no matter what, and they're going to buy it, and they're going to stream it, and they're going to share it,
I think jazz music is a great example, of that needing to capture that live and have that energy and have that feel. I could claim that, Banana Stand is all about live music because it's a dying craft and all that. But really, like, we didn't have the technical expertise to record studio musicians. I think a band paid us $100 one time, and we did the same thing that we did for a live show. It was like, well, here's the mics and it's recording, so good luck. They did not come back for their second album.
But I think that also goes into like, I feel like some musicians, they kill themselves in their own music and by overthinking, overproducing their social media ads and videos and music to the point where they've taken that organic like drive and love of the music out of their music. I feel like if it gets to a certain place, I'm like, that's it. I don't want to spend too much on it because I feel like it takes away the essence. You know, I hate when I work with producers sometimes because I fall in love with the demos. And then they're like, hold on, we're going to redo it. And they'll redo it. And I'm like, but that spirit that made you go like, you know, it's gone. You know, and it sounds great, but that thing that made you fall in love with it is gone because now you've kind of overanalyzed it. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people do that with their content these days too as well.
Or even technological abuse, you know. So we have like so many audio tools now. I think you have to use good judgment, you know. Yes. Like the whole, you know, quantized drums or the quantized vocals or the, you know, everything has to be, as a producer, it's like what's in good taste and what serves a song and what serves the artist, you know.
True.
You know, John mentioned something during his opening presentation about the importance of the quality of the audio relative to the quality of the video. So I'd be curious about you guys' opinions on that coming from, you know, sort of similar yet different perspectives. We agree with that, you know, ultimately the ear is less forgiving than the eye, that the audio quality trumps video quality when it comes to creating web-based content?
I don't know about that. Like, you know, we've worked with a lot of venues in town. A lot of them have kind of their own camera equipment set up, and sometimes it's fine to use that. But if we're recording something here, Holocene or even Mississippi Studios, we really prefer to have our own crew come in so they can be stationed around the stage. They can get on stage. You know, they're using equipment that's a lot higher in value. And for the audio, it's the same way. We can get like a standard bounce off the board, but really what we want to do is have a split off the stage where we have our own gear back here. And, you know, the Doug Fir is great to record for that reason because we can kind of be independent from the sound and the experience that's happening here in the crowd and then what we're going to try and produce that's going to be on the web later.
You know, something else to think about, too, this actually reminds me of something for my own band demos, and this comes up a lot. As a promoter, when I get demos submitted to me, that I often notice that what I'm hearing doesn't match what I'm seeing. So specifically, you might see a band, and they're playing and there's a crowd, and everyone's having a great time, but the audio is recorded off the board, which is great because you have control. But then the whole thing has that sort of sterile studio, I shouldn't say sterile because studio sounding doesn't automatically mean it's too good though. Like it doesn't match. It sounds like it was recorded in a studio, but yet I'm watching a live video. So one of the things just to kind of mention from a promoter's perspective, if you're producing live video, to be cognizant that, you know, whether it's high quality or low quality, that they match. Because if they don't, you start to get this weird feeling like something doesn't make sense here, but I can't quite put my finger on it. This looks horrible but sounds great. It doesn't look real.
I think albums are like that too. If I hear something that's too mechanical or like sort of too fixed, then I don't believe it's, you know. Well, when you hear the producer working harder than the musician, then there's something wrong, you know. Which is a lot of modern music, you know. You hear, you know, like you hear the producer, like you hear his sound, and the artist gets lost, you know, and that's, you know, there's a bunch of guys like that, you know. That's why a lot of music sounds the same, because it's the same 12 guys making all the records in the, you know, top 100, you know.
It all started
charts.
with Mutt Lange back in the day.
Mutt Lange, go ahead. Yeah. What's that?
Yeah, right.
That's
true. Yeah, you can't hide it when you're on stage. Well, actually, now you can. You just press a button and go.
A lot of backing tracks.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, who just had a bad performance? Someone was saying like SZA had a bad performance. You know, it's like at the Coachella, and it's just like nowadays. I feel like if you're going to give an experience, it's got to all correlate. Sometimes a lot of these artist things don't correlate. Like if Beyonce came up there with just 3 people and half dressed a certain way, you'd be like, what the? But she comes up there with 100-piece marching band and and dancers and shit screens and all of this stuff. I just feel like nowadays, I just feel like as long as people are forgiving, the ear is forgiving, even the eye is forgiving if it correlates with the music. If the visual and the music correlates, then I'm like, cool, I get that. But if it doesn't, then I'm sitting there like, what the hell? Let me back space and go to the next thing. You know, I don't have time for it, you know. But I mean, nowadays with also the Instagram are making, you know, instant celebrities nowadays, but they also try to make sure they correlate their visual branding with the musical branding. You know, it has to have some kind of cohesiveness in order for it to really hit home.
I think they can be different experiences too. For example, I really like a lot of Spoon records. I don't know if you've ever seen Spoon live, but you can take a nap. Like, I'm sorry, Britt Daniel, if you're in the room, but you're just you're boring live. You're like a boring band, but like I love listening to those albums at home. But you know, there's not enough drugs in the world to make me want to dance at a Spoon concert. And maybe there are. I haven't had enough, but.
Give it time.
But yeah, I mean,
it's just not legal yet.
I don't think there has to be a hard rule of like, you know, this is good and this isn't. It's, you know, what do you like? What are you in the mood for? And where are you at?
True, definitely.
So before this is done today, we're going to start talking about, you know, great content that spans beyond just sort of showing an audio or video performance, because I don't want to just build in the assumption that great audio-visual content is a performance of a song and nothing else. But this came up online, and I know it's my own question. I have to admit, like as far along as I am in some areas of my career, I actually have this question too, which is that if I'm just the average musician at home, and I'm seeing all these, you know, people there's a camera and it sounds great and they're producing their songs. Here I am at my bedroom, and I sound like, you know, I'm excellent, right? What's sort of the basic setup, just getting granular here, that one needs to have in order to produce these, you know, basic, you know, audio-visual recordings at home, that'll at least good enough to get online and use as a promotional tool?
I don't think there's. I mean, it all depends on what you feel comfortable with using. I mean, nowadays you could just walk it. Say if you don't have any music equipment and you're like, I'm going to go to Guitar Center. I don't have any association with Guitar Center, and this is not a plug for Guitar Center. I'm just saying, if you go into a music audio store, you're like, you could literally just go in there and kind of pick that, and if you really take your time and learn it and learn how to use it, you can make something happen. I can't tell you, I have not bought a microphone over $100 in the last 20 years. And I have songs on like Grammy-nominated records and everything. You know, my thing is like, hey, if I can record horns, they sound good dry, that's up to them to do the rest of the work as far as mixing and stuff. But nowadays, a lot of this stuff, you know, you could get you don't have to get a GoPro. Why get a $500 camera? I could get a $69 camera. I feel like there's no required list nowadays. I remember before, everyone was like, you got to get an inbox. And it was like, inbox. Everybody got to get an inbox. Now it's like, shit, you could get anything. $50, $500. I know people with great expensive equipment that can't even get the sound that the little guy is getting. So for me, it's just like whatever that you can work with, you know, especially with software. You might not like Logic. You might like Ableton. You might not like any of it. You want to use Reaper. You might use, Cakewalk. You got an old Audacity. Whatever you use, you just got to use it to the best that you possibly can. That's just my opinion.
No, I agree. I think, you know, going back to that first band that we recorded an album for, you know, I think when we were starting out, it was like GarageBand, a USB snowball microphone, and like a camera that we could sync up the audio to that maybe cost $60 or something like that. So if you're just a singer-songwriter in your bedroom, like you can get all that done for less than $100, definitely less than $200.
So Kevin is fortuitously right here. So Kevin, obviously, he owns a recording studio with lots of very high-end equipment, and his studio is always full. So clearly these bands have reached, the artists have reached a point where they've decided that okay, I've kind of reached the extent of what I can do with my home setup, I'm coming to you. Are you seeing any sort of pattern in terms of how they're making that? Like, when is it time to, when we've reached the end of your DIY, sort of, this is what I can do with my single, camera and my phone or whatever, where I need to start hitting a studio or professional video or whatever?
I find that people come to you for and they like the way that sounded. So they usually come and say, I really like the drum sound you got on that, or your vocal sound, your good, or your mixing or whatever. So I think people get to a point where, it's just like anything. You could hand a guitar over to 100 different people, and they're going to just all make it sound different. Same thing with recording gear. Just because you have Pro Tools doesn't mean you're going to make a great record. It's the guy who's, the ears and the knowledge and the experience that, So that's basically, and also helps that you got good gear, like front end stuff too. That does help, like converters and preamps. That does make a difference. It depends on what you're going for, So if you're going for a lo-fi thing, that's, sometimes I'll just dirty stuff up on purpose, like you're running through like, analog emulators or tube saturators or whatever. But if you are going for a certain thing, like a Whitney Houston recording or something, it really does help to have a Neumann and and a Millennium preamp or whatever,
I would just say too, like if you're a musician in Portland, there are so many great recording studios that are pretty affordable. Like you can take 6 months to save up or do what you need to, especially if you're in a band where people can pool their money. Like it's going to be less than if you're trying to buy all that stuff yourself, and you're going to have the knowledge behind it. So, look at rates, figure it out.
I totally agree. Like it's cheaper now to record than it was 16 years ago.
Yeah, and even for me, I have like, when you go to my setup, I just have like a Focusrite, a Sterling microphone, and instead of a, what is it called, Chaotic Eye, I like made my own, got a like foam ball and hollowed it out and put my microphone in there. Like I'm like DIY, but at the same time, I'm doing a renovation in my garage, and I'm about to like probably buy like a UA interface that costs X amount of money and spend more money because there's certain things I want to be able to do that I know I've maxed out the gear and equipment I already have because, but at the same time, I might record things at home, but I'll spend the money for a mixing engineer because yes, I could record and do all of that stuff, but I don't think I could sit down and take the hours and just use my ear and make it sound the best. There's other people that do that, so I'd rather spend the money doing that and pay money for mastering than try to do it all myself because I don't feel like I could do it all myself. So that's when you got to have a team of people or you work with. You send it over to Opal to get mixed, and then you send it over to Dana White and like Oswego or somewhere to master it. But, that's when you got to switch and say, where's the money need to go for this project to get the most bang out of its buck?
Looks like Charlie's got a question.
Surprise.
Icebreaker right here.
Hey, Charlie.
Hey, guys. So this kind of directly reflects what you guys are talking about. Like, what actually is your gear setup? If you don't mind sharing, I'd like to know sort of what, because you guys all sort of represent.
How long do you have?
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be everything. I mean, Kevin, I know you use Pro Tools because we've worked together.
Sure.
Right?
The basics, right?
Yeah,
like,
the basics.
Yeah.
You don't have to
What's your sort of go-to recording
like,
platform?
what's your chain?
You know
basic
what?
mic?
I actually started out on Sonar. Like when I first switched over, because I was kind of leery about the computer thing. I was running, tape machines and stuff, and I just didn't trust the computer thing. Like a button, you can lose everything. So, anyways, but I found that everybody uses Pro Tools, like like professional studios. So it was just sort of a standard that I had to sort of. I was reluctant for a long time, because it cost me, like the HD system cost like $16,000 to get into. So but there just came to a point where it was like, okay, like if I'm going to be in this game, I need to, do this, But what's important too is, like I said, the converters are pretty important. Like the UA thing you were talking about, if you're getting the Apollo or whatever. I mean, that there's a big difference between a, $200 all-in-one thing. It's sort of like those things do everything, but it's kind of like jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. So it is as soon as you start having a more discerning ear, you start noticing like, oh, that sounds sweeter, or that sounds, character, yeah.
We are lucky to have a lot of people different work on the projects, and a lot of those people kind of own their own equipment, and so a lot of times we're bringing in 4 or 5 different people to get the full range that we need. But we've got an Onyx board. Pro Tools is what I learned in college and kind of am comfortable with, but we also have Logic because some of our engineers prefer working with that. 58s, 57s, like all the pretty standard microphones. We've been lucky to get some help from Ear Trumpet Labs, so they've given us some microphones to use for some of our live videos. DSLRs for cameras, but we also have a guy on crew who kind of stepped up his camera game last year, and it's not quite, to the red level, but he's got, a really expensive, nice camera that he brings out. So I think that's the other thing. If you're trying to cobble together a project, or you're trying to work with multiple people in the same way that you could pool resources as a band, I think you can do that as audio and visual professionals and see where you have overlap. And again, maybe you guys can come together for a potential project to rent something or even purchase something that you might not have.
So I'm spoiled because at my job, we have like a ridiculous setup. So I could literally just go, like, wait till I get off around 5 and 5:30 and then record at work. But at the same time, for me at home, like literally, most of the stuff that I record are horn works, trombone, saxophone, trumpet. I never do vocals ever because I just feel like my gear is not geared for that and to give it the warmth and what it needs. But I use, what is it, a Focusrite, Scarlett.
Yes.
I got a couple different mics. Like I said, I go to a lot of different studios. If I want something that's more crazy and ridiculous, I could go and use whatever they have. What else do I use? Like I said, I got my bootleg, Chaotic Eye, and then really, and I use Logic. I'm a Logic head. I've switched. I never did a lot of recording myself. I used to do a lot of sequencing, so I used to use Reason all the time. So I went from Reason straight to Logic because one of my good friends who works with Dr. Dre started with Logic and stuff. So whenever I needed anything, I could just hit him up and be like, dude, how am I going to chop this? And he's like, hit the arrow. I had someone I could talk to, to get this information. But as far as that's like my setup at home. And literally, because I'm a family man and everything, I'm literally like, okay, let me set it up at the kitchen table. Let me unplug the refrigerator. Let me turn off the heat and let me record. I got literally 15 minutes. The kids are coming back soon. And that's usually my life. So
That's awesome, yeah.
Make it happen, yep.
exactly.
What you got?
Okay. Hey, guys. Hey, I want to come back a little bit to web content and something that Kevin and Farnell had both said earlier, and that was impact and cohesiveness. Of course, we're all artists. That's a very subjective thing. And I just wondered if each of you might give an example of when you saw something that you felt had impact and was cohesive, and what was it about that particular thing that brought that to you? Just because I think that'd give a better picture to some people that are trying to develop that picture.
Yeah.
Something, what would impact you guys?
Yeah, and actually, if it's something you know is online, we're actually connected here. We can show it. If you guys want to do that as well, just let me know.
The thing that I look for is, do I believe it? I mean, it's like things are compelling when it's real, Like, so for instance, like, you can always kind of tell the guy who's singing about something, but it's just words and melodies, But as opposed to, I was looking for an energy that somebody has that, I don't know, when something's real, it just feels like it flows through them, It's like this energy that flows through them, and it becomes infectious. It comes to me. It translates through speakers and translates through video screens, and that's the the hair raising on your arm. That's so. As far as like like artists that I don't know, you call them the real deal. For me, it's like when I see someone like what, like that is for real right there. That's. So that's what I mean about impact. It's like it hits you and it does something to you. So
For me, it could be various different things. Say if I'm looking at a band for particular, I'm looking at the photos, like how is what's grabbing? Is there silly costumes? Is the photo giving off a certain vibe that makes me even want to go further. If it's something with musical content, I feel like it just has to go hand in hand. If I'm watching a brand or Adidas has something, like if the music doesn't really match up with what's happening with the film part, I feel like then it does a disservice. It has to go together well. I have to and my thing is like, don't just take any popular song. I work in marketing, and music licensing now, so like I watch videos. I don't know how many like commercials and ads and things I watch on a regular, studying wise for my own music, but I have to make sure that my music can connect seamlessly with the film to bring up that emotion, that connecting, that makes me want to find out what's more happening with this, so I could spend the extra 2 or 5 minutes or even more diving more into it. Because if the content doesn't look good, it's not believable, it's also not genuine. Like nowadays, I get a lot of people, because I work with so many artists, and they're like, yeah, I do this, and I do that, and I do this. And I'm like, that's great. Let me hear your music. Because for me, talk is cheap. I love music because I could put it on, and I could tell what you've been doing and who you worked with and what you've done. And if it's not really coming to me as that, then I'm kind of like, okay, cool, that was great. Thanks for giving me that. But, you need to go back and work on whatever it is. But I don't know. I have so many different things, because I work with an artist, Mike Phillips, who is one of the first, like, non-athletes with brand Jordan. So he taught me a lot about marketing myself, selling myself, and branding myself, so I could be more attractive to companies, artists, and things like that. So I have a job that I work in that's basically marketing and advertising and music. So it just, it could be either or for me, But if the music is good, I'm like, if it's catchy, if it's rhythmic, if the sound, if it's certain sonically wise, any various different things could sell me on an artist. It just sonically, it might sound a certain way, but it might not be that well produced. Or it might sound like it's retro, but it actually was recorded last week, and they have the production together. The musicianship is ridiculous. I'm so flaky when it just all depends when it comes with me and content and branding. So
I think just forethought about what you're seeing on stage. Again, I'm trying to come from it from a live perspective, but something like Stop Making Sense, is kind of the pinnacle of what we would ever try and hope to create. But you mentioned earlier, Beyonce came out with 100 people and a drum line and all these dancers, but last year Solange came and she just had a drummer and I think a couple horn players and 3 backup singers. And on a stage like the Schnitz, that's very bare. But everyone was dressed in red, and the stage was bathed in red light, and they had a big red circle behind her, and so it all came together, and that entire performance felt like one artistic piece and not a set of a bunch of different songs. That passion, I guess, just has to be there. I watch this show Legion. It's about X-Men on FX.
It's awesome. It's a good show.
They used a Bon Iver song in the most recent episode, and it was just done really well. And like, I love the song. It's called like 22 million hashtag whatever the hell he's using to title his songs these days. But it was about this cycle of rebirth and death and like growing up, and I don't know, like, we've all kind of talked about when you feel that song hit you, or when you see those things hit you, like, and it's to the point now we have a lot of bands that want to work with us, but pretty much the only people that we decide to work with are artists we like and music we like, because if you're going to spend hours recording this thing, hours polishing it up, hours promoting it, you better love it, or else you're going to get sick of it real quick, and then you're probably not going to work as hard on it.
There's a program, it's a little bit random, but I'm producing a country music festival, so I happen to know about this. But it's the Texas Country Music Television, and it's obviously it's more high production than what you're going to do at home. But I would recommend checking it out, mainly because they do a really good job of capturing the authenticity of the artists. You know, we talk a lot about having the audio-visual sort of who you are coming through in your content. And so if you kind of see how they're approaching these performers, and they're not going crazy with the production, I think you'll see some good examples there. Got a question?
Hi, Stephanie Salvi. I'm one of the people that's not a musician, so I don't talk on mics, and I'll apologize for that. I do the business, and I like to do the business and in music and motion pictures. And and the motion picture stuff is the newest for me right now. And what I'm learning is the way that the television and movies are going is branded content, which means there's no place for advertising anymore on Netflix and so I'm wondering if any of you have had experience with that, and how do we monetize our content?
I have no idea. We've lost thousands of dollars doing this.
Actually, where's John? AudioGlobe,
idea.
John. All right, so you probably have an answer for this, monetizing audio-visual content. You want to speak to this? Can we get you on a mic real quick? Because I know that's a lot of what your business does. So let's might be a good place to start. And if you guys obviously have some additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, so check one, check. Yeah, so we have a model that we've been working on, and it's called Livescription, and it's a royalty revenue sharing kind of model. So that's what I could speak to really, is we're trying to do some kind of, you know, empowering the whole community to get together and generate the revenues through that, you know, the entire community. And then our technology kind of distributes the money that, you know, through our algorithms. But, you know, the other angle is, you know, what platforms are out there, and, you know, are you trying to sell it as a single piece of content, or is it, you know, connected to something bigger, you know?
So to add to that, so in terms of, you know, monetizing content, it's almost like a whole separate topic in and of itself, because the assumption here is that before you can monetize it, the content has to be compelling. That said, there are a couple things to investigate there. One of them would be, and the other one is you have to be able to build up enough of an audience to monetize it. So if the song or the video or whatever it is isn't enough to get a lot of views or subscribers or whatever the particular model is built around, none of the revenue models are going to work, with the possible exception of licensing, which Farnell can speak to. But in terms of like selling advertising, you know, if you want to make money as a YouTuber by, you know, ad revenue, you've got to have a whole bunch of views and viewers. Same thing with sponsorship. So this idea of branded content where, you know, you might, I'm trying to think of a really obtuse example, having a Coca-Cola bottle in your video, you know what I mean? Like, again, no one's going to pay you to do that unless a lot of people are seeing your video. So I think that it all comes back to the same thing, which is the first answer to monetizing content is the content has to be something that people want to see, whether they're paying for it or not.
I guess I can kind of, we do make a little bit of money now, so that was kind of a lie. But to your point, you know, we did it for years with just getting goodwill among the community. I think a lot of artists trust us to work with them because they know, just like they are, it's kind of a sunk cost. Like, we're putting in more work than we're getting, you know, revenue or anything else out of it. So we've been hired to record here for places like Atlantic Records or Pitchfork. Red Bull has hired us to help curate events and record some of those things. And we have had brands also come to us to put their products in certain things. So now when we have our Unpeeled series, you know, our sponsors are Ear Trumpet Labs, which gives us some microphones, so we use their microphones. And as many of the recordings as we can. It's not always that microphone is the best choice for whatever we're recording. Revival Drums is another, you know, shop that they help us out if we need some equipment, and they give us a little bit of money so we can put their slug at the end of a video. And now we're being hired to do more service type work. So we work with a winery called Hazelfern, helping book acts out there, and then going out and creating videos and musical content with the vineyards and all that stuff in the background so that then that brand can use it. And then bands are now paying us to record their sets so they can put out their albums on their own. So of all the albums that we've released, only a handful, really make money. And we do a royalty split with every artist that we work with. Unfortunately, a few thousand Spotify plays means we're splitting like 14 cents. So it's not great for artists. And then for us, it's, the original content, the stuff that we were passionate about comes first. And we're lucky to have the service work and kind of whatever branding we can get. But it doesn't pay anyone on the, overarching staff. And then even the artists, we make sure they get paid first and paid well if it's for any sort of brand thing. And then for the crew that works on it, we pay them as well. But, they should be charging 4 times what they do. It's really a labor of love.
We did one of our very first panels was on the topic of I think it was concert promotion. And Mike Walker, who runs marketing for the Crystal Ballroom, was on the panel. And I don't remember what the question was, but I think someone asked him, like, well, what's the key to, filling up a room? And the answer he gave, and it got laughs at first until everybody realized what he was saying, but he said, well, you have to be awesome. All right, well, yeah, that's pretty descriptive. But what he was really trying to say, and it's true about monetizing content in general, which is that at the end of the day, with the exception of licensing, which I'm going to ask you about in a second, Farnell, there's pretty much the only way you're ever going to make money in music is if it's interesting enough that you have lots of views, followers, audience size. You know what I mean? Whether you're trying to promote a concert, sell a record, make advertising or sponsorship revenue. None of those things happen if you don't have an audience. So the one overarching lesson there is that as you one is trying to develop their profile as a professional musician, 80% of your effort has to go into developing your audience. All the rest of it, good product first. Second, develop your audience. All other things follow. I can tell you as a concert promoter that filling a room is super, super easy when you have an audience. And it sounds obvious, but I can't tell you how many musicians think in terms of, I got to get a gig, as opposed to, I got to get an audience. If your goal is to get a gig, you can get gigs, but if the room isn't full, you aren't going to get any more. Same with albums, right? You can make an album, but if no one listens to it, you're not going to make any money on any other way, with the exception of possibly of licensing, which doesn't require an audience. So I'm curious in terms of what quality of level do things need to be at when they get submitted to a place like Marmoset?
It's very mixed. It all depends on what you're trying to do sonically. We might get a track that literally it just sounds like somebody had just like bad guitar amp and it had a bad, something was wrong with it, but it gives that certain like and everything might be rough and just like really harsh, but the thing about it is that somebody might be looking for that type of sound for their branding content. You never know. That's like with my drummer, Tyrone Hendricks. I said, Tyrone, you need to record 20 songs in the studio, just you playing drums. And I said, let's put it in the catalog at Marmoset. Next thing you know, it's used on a Herschel wallet commercial, 10 seconds. Just him. Like, the thing about music licensing is that the people that do well in music licensing, they're making all kind of music. They're not just making sad, slow music. You can't. Who uses that? People do, but you have to make music that you feel that. And I tell people, I say, hey, check out. These are the trends. These are our references. You got this knowledge. Now put your own heart, put your own flavor, put your own swag into the music, but still add some of that type of stylistic wise into your music, and then make something of it. Because all at the end of the day is a crapshoot. It's like rolling dice. What's the odds on you getting winning? You're like, oh shoot, like. You might lose all your money before you actually get a lot of money. It's like going to the casino, because you can make the greatest song. This song could be the greatest song you've ever made, but that doesn't mean it's going to get licensed. It might take 2 months. It might take 6 months. It might take 2 years, and finally a brand finds that song, and they're like, hey, we have $20,000 for that song right there. But you made this one song, but do you have any other songs that helped you try to get traction and licensing? So, like for me as a composer, I'm making everything. I'm making hip-hop. I'm making funk. I'm making West Coast hip-hop. I'm making like 90s hip-hop. I'm doing jazz. I'm doing all of these different things and putting it out there because that just increases my odds. The more songs I have out there, more likely I will get the placements that I want, you know. But there's also those people that make that one song and it's just right there. It's right down the middle and everyone loves it. And that one song might get $100,000 every year. It's, you know, it's hit and miss. You never know. Sometimes some companies like Marmoset, it might be a different company or someone else and they specializes in that music. You might need to go to them. You see that a lot of their songs, who is it? There's another company and they use like a Vortex song, Back Pocket, for an Apple commercial. Put it in my pocket, put it in my pocket, my back pocket, put it. And that song, you wouldn't think like Apple would use that for a video. And it was, evidently they made a lot of money off of that. But you never know. But the thing about it, different agencies specializes in different things. Different companies specializes in different things. Getting to know people as well also helps, networking. But, you know, I mean, I could sit down and talk about licensing all day. I'm still doing it myself, you know. My next goal for licensing is kind of do more of the retro soul. Like, we don't have anything that's like Daptones here in Portland. Yes, we have Earl Thomas. Like, Earl Thomas is like, you know, he's the real deal, though. But you don't have, like, no one producing music on that level of Daptones. So my thing is like, hey, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do it and get the baddest dudes together, and hopefully we make a lot of money. If we do, dinner on me. I'm treating everybody. No.
You heard it. We have this on video now, so he said that. Yeah.
Treating everybody here, not everybody on no.
I would say I don't think you can go really chasing branded content. I think a lot of artists are going to be adverse to that. To give you an example, we booked a band for a Red Bull show here, and we said, all right, we want to record one of your songs, and we're going to record it. Red Bull's going to own the copyright, so they can do whatever they want to with it. Spoiler alert, they didn't do anything with it. But the band was like, all right, okay, so this is the song that we want you to record tonight. It's called Bullfighter. And then they got up, and the whole song was just the lyrics, fuck you and all of your bullshit. Just over and over. And we're like, here you go.
Here you go, yeah.
That might be really marketable in today's environment.
Now, like I said, there might be somebody, a brand, who actually wants that. It might not, and we're not talking about just for TV. This could be for anything. Nowadays, companies have to purchase music for their videos, no matter if it's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or whatever it is. And that's the thing. It's two different things. Some people, I tell people like, hey, just be true to yourself. Make the music you want to make. But then you might need to find the right company to rep that type of music. But at the same time, for me, I'm a composer who's trying to, I'm kind of in a way chasing brands, but not really. I'm still like putting my own heart and soul into it. I usually won't make anything that at the end of the day, I feel embarrassed that I made. Like, I want people to hear it and be like, wow, Farnell made that? That's dope. But at the same time, some people don't want to deal with that. Some people are like, hey, I'm going to make the music I make. You either like it, you don't, and screw you. I mean, but some bands are not good for licensing on that behalf.
I think also as like a service agency, being separate from those brands has been really good, because I can come on stage and say, like, Donald Trump sucks a whole ass and should be kicked out of office. Probably can't say that if I'm working on the Marmoset Twitter account, or if I'm trying to like run a big country music festival, I can't be like, yeah, that dude should be tried for treason.
Exactly. But that's when you need to.
I stay away from it.
But see, that's why I love it, because at the end of the day, when I'm not on anyone's dime, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna say what I want to say, and I'm gonna do what I want to do, and make what I'm gonna make. You're either gonna love me or not. And that's how you should be. I feel like even with your content, you should be just true to it. You don't want to be embarrassed, You want people to say, hey, Farnell, I saw you I did what? No, I don't. Everything I put out and ever recorded, I'm super proud of. If I wasn't, I would not have done it in the first place. I don't believe. I like to sleep at the end of the night. you know. So
You don't sleep. Come on, nobody's fooled.
yeah, I don't sleep.
We were on to you, man.
One last thing I would say is like the people that have come to us for service work, they came to us because they appreciate the quality and the time that we put into it. Even with some of the Unpeeled sponsorships and stuff, they never ask like, well, how many views is this going to get us? Or like, how's this going to translate to sales down the line? They were just like, you make good stuff. I want to support you and support the community. So.
Man, that's a really good point. It can't be your goal to get the views. It has to be, I'm going to make something great, and by virtue of being great, it will be compelling.
Yeah,
Charlie.
definitely.
So this kind of segues into a good point. It seems like there's a direct conflict between quality and quantity. And in social media, you can either take a lot of time and create something really high quality, but then there's this demand for like posting every day and like keeping the, you know, because the algorithms work the way they work because Facebook just dictates it, right? There's nothing you can do. And so like if you want to create really high quality content, obviously that takes way more time, you know, because quality is really just how much you want to dig into something, right? And then like, but quantity, you know, where do you guys lie on that spectrum? Or at least better question to phrase it is like, what's been most successful, right? Do you lean more like I'll take a year to make a song because that's the highest quality, or you're like actually I'm just trying to bang out because I've followed Banana Stand since the beginning.
I'm very sorry.
No, I love what you guys are doing. I think it's fantastic. My buddies
Since you were just little green bananas
But-
hanging from the tree.
But I mean, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, you guys have always seemed to me like more like let's get content out there, right?
Yeah.
And not but then like working with Kevin Hahn, his is more like I'm going to take a lot of time on this and make sure that the quality is really high, but there's less frequent stuff. So like,
Yeah,
what's your thoughts on
we're
that?
putting out maybe 3 or 4 live albums now, and that's a lot of work. We'll do the full mix, the full master, get album art made, get all the videos in a row, try and get press. But one of the new things that's been most successful for us is the Unpeeled video series, which has a couple sponsors, so we're able to pay our crew. And that is, we record 2, sometimes 3 of those a month. And the reason we've been able to do that is because we have separate crews going out for each one of those. So we're not burning anybody out. It's, all right, you record this week, get it mixed in a week. The editor will chop that video up in a week. And then we just have multiple teams kind of always rolling. And that's how we've been able to put out so much content.
You know, I think back to your question there. I think it's a balance between, you know, quality and quantity. Like, so for instance, like I think it's not a good thing to have too much time to overthink it and to overdo something. You know, you could beat something to death, you know? You just want to have, for me, like with sessions, like it's about the flow. You know, are you being productive and but at the same time, you don't want to, you don't want to rush something too much too. You know, if you feel like you're on the verge of something, you know, you're heading in the right direction, you don't want to cut it off, you know? So it's sort of that window of productivity where you want to, it's like riding the wave, you know? If someone's like singing well or playing well, you know, you want to let them keep doing it, you know? But if someone's like just not going to get it that day, you know, just because you have another 3 hours pounding it doesn't mean it's going to get better, you know? So yeah, so it's a balance.
This is it's a little bit of a tangent, but it's probably germane enough to mention, which is that I'm going to use Facebook as an example, but social media in general works this way. Because ultimately the question is, you know, how do I decide whether this is a situation where I need to produce something that's really, you know, professionally produced and go to one of these guys who do this kind of thing versus just something I do on my phone or everywhere in between. And the first answer ends up being depends on what type of content it is. Because clearly, I mean, one extreme would be is if it's a bunch of guys or gals hanging out at rehearsal, that doesn't need to be, you know, it's funny. Right, it's a bunch of people having funny conversations. It's a get to know the band or get to know the artist kind of content. So high production doesn't matter versus, hey, this is our single. Obviously, that has to be a higher production level. But I think the other thing is to understand like how social media algorithms work. It's like, and I apologize for those of you who've heard me say this before, but it's kind of like borrowing money from a bank. If you have money, then it's no problem getting money. Right? They'll give you more of it. If you have no money, the bank won't give you any money. And social media works the same way. I'm going somewhere with this. So if you are someone who, let's say, for example, you're a musician, and you only post when you have this great polished product, and maybe it's only once a month or whenever you have an album or whenever you have a show, and there's not a lot going on in between, then when you show that piece of high-quality content, if you don't already have engagement on your profile or page or whatever, you're not going to get it when that golden piece of content comes up. And so I think it's important that if, obviously having good content is important, but it's also important to be consistent in your activity on social media so that you build up your social value. So, ironically, a lot of the times the lower quality, the stupidest, the most ridiculous content tends to get the most action, right? And unfortunately, no one's going to pay you to necessarily, say something funny while you're singing your song in the shower, right? But by doing that shower song, you might get a bazillion people over the course of several posts commenting on that, and all of a sudden, a day later, oh, by the way, here's my new track. And those people now all of a sudden,
scoopity.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think it's important that you use your various types of content strategically. Use your lowbrow content for engagement, for self-effacing, for things where it truly doesn't matter. And then when you really want to put your best foot forward, whether it's something for licensing or it's a polished product that you want to sell, those are the times when you really want to get your A content out there.
Okay, I'm all about the quality, but at the same time, I'm not about. I know what I can do as a musician, and I make sure that I get the best musicians around me that they're great at what they do. So if I'm putting a song together, a lot of times I'm like, okay, we're going to go to the studio. I got it literally booked for an hour. I need everybody to play their parts. And really, tell you the truth, it shouldn't even take a whole hour. You play your part, you play your part, you play your part. We might do a couple takes. And by the end of the hour, do a rough mix on it. And I might even say, depending on the genre, if it's jazz, I'm like, I'm not putting no mastering on it. I don't need to if it's just an acoustic group. But then if it's hip-hop or something else, I might it depends. I might cheat. I might do a little lander or something like that and have somebody throw a little mix or something. It just depends. Or I might hit my buddy up and say, hey, can you do a little thing on it? And I'm trying to get content out. Because like I said, if I really did well engaging my fans and my friends and family and stuff, they're going to enjoy it no matter what. And I feel like because I've spent the time and the practicing and such learning the things that I'm doing, it's always going to be at a good quality. I'm not about quantity at all. But it's different. I put in all this time and level so I could do these things. But I feel like if the quality still is not there, I'm not going to pay attention to it as a viewer. So
I think, too, just for everybody, because I know like one of the things you want to walk out of here with, there's some really specific examples. And I can tell you, as one who follows Farnell, that if you're looking to see sort of how somebody sort of navigates this way through lo-fi, hi-fi, goofy content, serious content, I would just go follow Farnell because you'll get a master class right there.
Yeah, and it just all depends because half of my social media, I post about family. I'm posting about my kids being silly. I might even have my wife on a live stream, and she walks in early in the morning in her hair, and she's like, really? Are you really doing this? And I have, like, coffee time. I used to teach people how to do French press and things like that. But at the same time, they know whatever they see on my stream is going to be engaging in some way or form. Music-wise, I always try to bring the best music. If it's just like a show, I try to make sure I have dope graphics, even if it's silly, comical, or if it's serious. I just try to make sure I always have something at a certain level that's still engaging. It's not just no piece of crap and someone just. But actually, I can't say piece of crap because I've seen some hand-drawn flyers. I've been like, damn, I need you to do my show. What was the one thing? Someone did a flyer. They said, hey, I need you to do a flyer. And they need to have this and this and this. And they end up printing the text message as the actual flyer. And I was like, wow, that's amazing.
In the production, sorry to interrupt, in the production office, I don't know if it's still here, at the Doug Fur, there's a stage plot hanging in the production office. I don't know if it's still there, but it's the Led Zeppelin tribute stage plot. Is it still there? It says, I think there's just 4 names on it. It says Robert, Jimmy, John Paul, and John. And there's nothing else on it. And it is the best stage plot ever, right? Because Moses, what you got?
Hey, I just wanted to add on to your thought.
Moses Barrett from the June Bugs, everybody.
What's up, everybody?
Yeah.
Content creating is a muscle. Content creating is something you get better at. So the best content you can create is the content you're creating right now. I feel like Banana Stand Media is like perfect example, right? Like if you waited until you're like, man, we got all the stuff, we're really good at it, we can, like you just have to get out there and make stuff, and then you get better at making stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean some of our earlier records, they're fine. They're fine. But the stuff we're putting out today is head and shoulders above what it was, and that's because more artists and more creators and more producers have come to work with us. In terms of social media, like, I don't know if anybody follows the Banana Stand Twitter account. It's just me yelling about the government's lies. I have no idea why anyone would follow us on that channel.
It worked for The Daily Show. They're huge.
Yeah, I mean, it used to. But, like, Facebook has changed so much. I work in social media for my day job, and I fucking hate it. I'm good at it. I don't have a Facebook account anymore because I'm sick of all that stuff. But it's totally pay-to-play these days. Like, we've got 3,000-4,000 followers on Facebook. If we post a brand new video, we might get 40 views. But if you throw Facebook $5-10, well, now suddenly they're giving you a few hundred views. So Facebook's terrible. I think everyone should delete it. I would have to get a real job, and I'm fine with that.
So I'm gonna challenge that for a second. I don't like, as a user, I don't like Facebook either. So all of that, like, obviously I totally jive with. But our experience, I use, because of the target demographic that I serve, Facebook ends up being the number one way to reach them. And what we've discovered is that the pay-to-play things is sort of true, but sort of not. We found pretty consistently, I'm looking at Bozak, who handles like 99% of my social media, is that if you do a really good job of the in-between important content stuff, then your content will get seen. I mean, so when we do like show announcements, for example, on pages that have done a good job of fomenting, building up that social capital, we tend to not have to pay for them. But the opposite's also true. Is the reason why there's such a perception of pay-to-play is because the vast majority of people who have accounts on these social networks aren't active until it's showtime or until they've got a video to share. And unfortunately, if you do that, then yes, no one's going to see it. So, this isn't necessarily a content creation strategy, but it is a content rollout strategy, which is that, and I think Moses, you alluded to this too, which is don't wait for perfection. Just get going and get active, because the more things you get out there, even if it's just a horrible content, or even if if you want to yell at the president, that actually does get a lot of comments. And I learned this in tribute bands, right? Because as a guy in tribute bands, I'm like a pariah to half the music scene. It's like, fuck it. But the reality is, every time somebody rips on a tribute band, I'm like, sweet, because what Facebook is seeing is tribute band, and so it turns it into a more important topic. So I'm like, even if people are hating on your post, awesome. They're helping you. They are helping you. They don't realize it. They think they're hurting you, but they're actually helping you. So don't be afraid to post stuff if it's not perfect, or if it seems ludicrous, or if it's for laughs, or it's off topic, because the more action you get when you... Dude, are you kidding me? Absolutely. I might block you personally, but my page will keep you on there.
Okay,
Absolutely.
a couple things. I was just thinking of something.
Here we go.
We were talking about the Solange versus Beyonce thing earlier. The thing I like about brand and content and stuff, when I see this stuff on social media, and then when I see someone in real life, and I'm just like wait, this is you can't be both people, but I feel like there still should be some kind of connection between your social media life and real life. That's why most of my stuff is about kids, but I'm a different type of person. Like, I do too much. Facebook, yeah, I hate Facebook. I feel like I just want to, if I could just like throw like some kind of virus bomb and it all just like blows up and goes to flaming hell. But at the same time, I love it because I get to see my nieces and cousins and things like that. But shameless.
They can just text you, though.
I know, it's true, but sometimes they don't, because they're just like in the moment. They're like, "Hey, I'm with my son and so and so, blah blah blah," and it's done. And they might not send me that same video and such. I get to see them kind of like in real time in their day. It's a weird thing, but I started this weird group called Jam of the Week. 4 years ago. It's like 60,000 musicians worldwide. And literally it just started as, I think it started on Instagram. At the time, Instagram, you only could do 15 seconds for a video. And I said, what can you do in 15 seconds as a jazz musician? And I was like, I'm going to play a fast-ass blues, like solo. You know, and I put a challenge out there to my friends. Evidently, at the time, the algorithm, all of that stuff with Facebook was crazy, because if anybody typed Jam of the Week or posted into the group I started, all of their friends would know. So it just caught on like wildfire, like literally. Like 4 years later, 60,000 musicians, and every week we post up a different song, a different theme. Like last week was Joe Henderson. I might say, like, next week, let's do a Prince song. And everyone will post up themselves playing a Prince song. So, like I said, I love it for that, because it brings people on social media together to do this great thing. And then you get those people who comment during the week, and they're like, hey, look at me jamming out on this jam. And I'm like, no, we're here with rules and things and such. So, but yeah, I hate social media and I love it at the same time. So
You know what? It's like, I think it's a necessary evil, because
That's a good way of putting it.
Exactly.
Necessary evil,
It's like, but just like anything in life, you have to make it. There's the good and bad about it, and you just have to make it work for you. So I can't even. I think I'd probably have my business would probably be cut in half if like social media didn't exist. You know, for especially if you're, like whatever skilled thing that you do. Like people have to. To me, it's about being in the forefront of people's minds. So if people see you mixing stuff or recording stuff, they're like, oh, boom, I'm working on a new record and looking for a guy to do this or that. Like, if he just saw you last week doing this thing, you're going to be on the forefront of his mind, or whatever. Even as a hired gun musician, it's like people see you doing certain things, then you become known to do as a certain thing. So they, like for me, it's like. I think it's sort of a necessary thing, and like without it, and like even with Facebook, like I think a third of my business is like communicating on Facebook. Like, hey, you got an opening, blah blah blah, through Messenger or whatever. It's just another avenue besides my phone and email. That
you have to detach, right? I mean, that's the reality of Facebook is that more so than the other ones, because Facebook's more interactive. You don't get the same types of toxic interactions on Instagram. Twitter's a whole other deal, but that's really toxic. But Facebook can get pretty ugly pretty fast. But also, Facebook is loaded up with people who are in like my age group and up. So I'm 45. So it's not like if you're dealing with 20-somethings, for example, you're not going to get a lot of action on Facebook, even by genre. Like we find with our country bands that they're actually more active on Instagram and more relevant on Instagram than they are on Facebook. So I think when it comes to social networks and those types of things, so it's really important. Again, we're a little off topic, but is make sure you're living in the place where your audience lives. That's the bottom line. No matter what you feel about the platform, if your audience is there, you've got to be there. If you're not, hey man, don't needlessly suffer.
The kids are into Marco Polo now, so
yeah. Which
like
I've never heard of, which
Marco
just goes
Polo.
to show. Right?
See, I'm like,
good
what?
sign, yeah.
I thought that
But
was
now
the game
that-
you played in the pool.
It's a swimming pool game, right? Yeah.
But see, now that I've said Marco Polo's cool, like it's not.
You just ruined it.
It's
Yeah.
not cool anymore. I'm too old. The fact that I know about it means that it sucks now.
No, there's no one way. Yep.
Speaking of platforms, what do you guys do to handle cross-platform posting and all that stuff? Like, what's your strategy there? And also, what tools do you use?
So just to reframe that too, I mean, this is actually one of the questions we had that came online, which is that, best place to house audio and video content for sharing, right, and visibility.
We're everywhere, so Vimeo is my preferred platform. I just think it's a place for creators. It's not really a place for ads. So we've always had a pro account there, and we kind of use that almost as a workspace for rough cuts and things like that. We have a YouTube channel now. A nice guy named David Gluck is kind of helping us get that going. And, going back to the subscription model, you have to have 1,000 subscribers now on your YouTube channel, or else Google's not going to allow you to run ads. So going back to building up your audience before you can actually make any money, that's really important. For social media, we've got just a great team of people that help us out. Again, it's usually me yelling about bullshit on Twitter, but we have a content calendar through shared Google spreadsheets. Here's where videos live. Here's when they should come out. Here's a column for, does this artist have a show coming up that we can help promote? It's just a lot of organization and time, and really it takes, for us, getting together as a team 2-3 times a month. We'll come together either through a Google Hangout or in person and talk about all the stuff that we have coming up and how we're going to release it. So it's like a business. It's like a job. It's not always fun.
So just to let everybody know, too, we're down to less than a half hour. So if you have burning questions, don't sit on them any longer. I got another one that is related to what came in online, and this is around the topic of starting it yourself and then going into a professional environment to finish it. So one of the questions is, if I'm going to be working on, and we have parsed this into audio and video, what do I need to show up at the studio with? Or is there something I need to avoid? Like, hey, man, if you show up and it's like this, I can't do anything with it. What do you want to see when someone's showing up at the recording studio that you can actually work with and take to the next level?
Oftentimes it's like people come to do things that they can't do at home. It's like, for instance, like it's hard to get a good drum sound at home, so
drums and vocals, right? Yeah.
The preamps, mics, and all that stuff. So oftentimes, they'll come in, do that portion, go back home, because they can track bass and guitars and whatever at home, or I have a certain special microphone, like I've got this special modded Neumann U87 that people like for vocals. So they might come in and do that, like the really important things that people really pay attention to, like vocals. It's like this focal point, of the music. So they might do those things, and if you're, they might go home, mix it, and I might master it, or I might mix it, or they send it off to someone else for mastering. So I think it's just using like your resources, what you have available and what you can afford, to do too, So.
Hey, Aaron, I wanted to ask you about on the same topic about when you're doing live recordings, about lighting for a second, because I see a lot of videos and that seems to be the bugaboo. People are showing up, they're green with lots of LEDs on them. Thoughts on what advice would you give to musicians who are setting up a show that's going to be video recorded?
Pay somebody to do lighting if you don't know how to do it. Like, lighting is a separate skill, just as video or audio is. We did a show with Shanti Darling probably 2 years ago at Holocene. Holocene's got a pretty good setup. They've got some lights, but we spent hundreds of dollars on lighting that night to make sure that the performance was fun and felt energetic, that you could see all of the backstage musicians. That's really hard. If you're a drummer, you probably feel, you feel ignored all the time.
I can't see myself ever.
Yeah. So, if you can't afford to pay somebody, because a lot of times if you're going to have a full lighting stage setup, that could be $1,000 right there. You can go and rent some tube lights, but it's a skill. Find someone who went to film school or who's read up on it, or understands how to frame a shot.
Just to add a little piece of that, just make sure that if you're hiring a lighting company that it's just like with anything else. I mean, the good news about production equipment getting cheaper is that there are more providers out there. But just because someone has the equipment doesn't necessarily mean they're good with it. And again, as a concert promoter, I've been dealing with this for several years now. Once the low power consumption LEDs have sort of made their way out into the market, there are a bazillion lighting companies, and a lot of the time the lighting company consists of house rig plus a row along the back of really cool lights. And so when you see the video, what you see a bunch of dark musicians in front and a bunch of lights in the back. So I'm not a lighting expert, but I can tell you that the right kind of front lighting on the musicians is critical. So make sure, beyond just hiring a lighting company, that you're really clear and coordinate with your video provider. Say, hey, is the package that we're getting going to yield the best results? Is this going to look good on video, or are we going to look like Joe versus the volcano with the light? Yeah, that's an
so
if you know that, you're old.
If we're recording in the basement, we've got a bunch of just like grip lights that you could buy at any hardware store, and some diffusers over the front of those. But we have the band come in. We've got a lot of the microphone and audio stuff set up. We get the band, kind of dialed in with all the audio stuff. Then the band takes a break, and then we have the video crew come in, and we'll have me or other people kind of stand where the musicians will be, and then that's a whole other process, is getting that lighting correct for video, and it can take half an hour, 45 minutes. So
For me, it's everything I do. It requires a team. I have a team of people that I go to, and I never hire someone if I've never seen their work before. I just can't put that trust into someone's hand who really doesn't know how I function. And it's not like I'm a perfectionist. I just like things a certain way. I'm the same way. If I have to get a piano sub, I would rather not get a piano sub for a show because he might not know how I like my music. So if I need video production, if I need graphics design, I got my man JP Downer if I need some illustration, who does Decent Don. Shout out to JP and Decent Don and the Vortex magazine. But I get him to do my illustrations. If I need video, I call up the right people for that. If I need someone to handle some social media, or if I need some video, music distribution, or need some help with certain things, I just have people I kind of have built up relationships and friendships over the years that can help me with everything I don't know how to do. Or guess what? I don't have time. I got family and job and all this other stuff. So,
other questions? Make sure we hit some of this before we kind of start getting close to the end here. Yep. Oh, hit the mic so we get it for posterity. We want to make sure those AudioGlobe guys get it on
Okay,
recorded.
so this is a video technical question. Have any of you guys used 4K at all, and is it kind of like overkill?
no, I mean,
What is 4K for those who don't know? Me.
Just
It's a
highest
resolution
res.
thing.
I mean, how many people really have 4K displays right now anyway? So, yeah, like I just. If we had the equipment and we can afford it, absolutely. Because that's the other thing. If you're just getting started, I can't overemphasize. Just create things. It doesn't matter if you think they're bad or other people think they're bad. You're gonna get better. I mean, I was reading an interview with Red Fang, and they were like, "How did you guys be so successful?" And they're like, "Well, we just did it for 10 years, and now people know us. That there's no real secret to making it happen. Just keep doing it." So once you start doing it, you start get addicted to the gear, and you become kind of a gearhead. So yeah, I would love to have like 4K cameras, but it's just not really a priority for us.
Yeah, I've been trying to price out, and I just can't get myself to really throw the money in because of like what you said.
Because then it'll be 10K after that.
yeah,
That's the
and
problem.
and also, I mean, remember when it was like HD, high resolution, and no one had the money to upgrade them. But then guess what? As time goes along, things come down, the price comes down, and then you're like, everybody has HD. Now everybody's 4K. Everybody's going to have 4K. I mean, they're going to have a 4K phone probably in the next year or so. I mean, that's just how the technology is moving. It's moving so fast.
What about 3D audio? Have anybody worked with that at all?
Yeah, but headphones only have two. You know what I mean? Like, what's it going to end up on? I mean, like surround sound. I mean, that's an awesome concept, but you got to have, what is that? 5 speakers, to make that work. So, even just back to your point of the high res, I mean, like right now you can record in like 96K, sample rate, but it's kind of like it's going to end up on 44.1, when you master your CD. So sort of like overkill to spend that much resources on your computer, to get gain so little, and most people can't even tell. I mean, we accept MP3s,
Yeah.
and that to me, like, waves and MP3 is a huge difference, but that's what we accept. So it's kind of like, it's like video, it's like,
And just like Charlie said, what is it being used on? What's the platform you're using? Cell phones, laptops. You could have 10. I mean, this time I compress things even smaller because I know it's not going to be viewed on somebody's big screen TV. So I'm like, what? Why not?
It's also a marketing thing, too, it seems like. It's like the company's like latest, greatest, Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, it looks totally retro. Yeah.
The fact I read that I couldn't believe this. I mean, I cannot believe this is a thing. I'm calling bullshit, but it's a thing. The cassette tapes are coming back. There is no
it is a
fucking
thing.
logic
It is a
to
thing.
this.
They never left.
It is.
They never left. They never left. I have an artist by the name of I Love Brandon, and I'm putting out a tape of his because, and guess, I mean, I work for Marmoset. We sent out 340 tapes of Blossom's record that's on Liquid Beat with Hot 16 that I'm playing trumpet on, and we also sent out a record from Fresh Selects, Kenny Fresh. They bought 340 tapes of each and sent them out, but they also sent out really cool USB walks with them as
no
well.
one had a tape player to play it.
But I have a tape player and I still bump it. It's that nostalgic. Like, who doesn't want to hear the like, for me, I love to hear the snap and the crackle of vinyl. I love to hear, but that's just me. I mean, I put on lo-fi music in the morning and lo-fi music at night, and my kids are sitting there and singing to melodies, you know. But that's the thing about it. It's the listener, there's a certain threshold. And I feel like once you get out of the good and the bad, it's you know, I mean, who's gonna do? If I have a red camera, which is like amazing and godly, like, do I really need to upgrade to get the red with the 4K and actually, like, who's telling the difference? It's not being displayed on the movie cinema. Like, I feel like sometimes we get too caught up on the gear, and then I feel like we don't put enough time into the making of music. I'm a trumpet player. People are like, hey, what trumpet you play? What's the dimensions? I'm like, hey, guess what? My mouthpiece fits on the horn, and it sounds good when I play it. Yes, there's different makers that have different things, but if my ear approves and I could be able to play everything I know that's in my head out, I'm like, that's the one I want. Why spend the thousands of $1,000? You could spend time learning how to do whatever you're doing more of and being more creative in that way. I feel like that takes the soul out of it.
I think cassettes are coming back for a couple reasons. One is just general hipster bullshit, which I bought Frank Ocean's Endless
that's
on
where I was
VHS.
going. That's where I was going. Yeah.
I bought Frank Ocean's Endless on VHS, but I have a VHS player and the rewinder that you had to do before you get charged from the video store or whatever. But I think the other reason is because paying for vinyl is super expensive. Like, vinyl is prohibitive for most artists starting out.
Yeah.
And it's heavy. Like, if you collect vinyl, like, when you move, it's just such a pain in the ass. So you want to have something that you can sell people that's physical, right? Because no one's really using CDs anymore. But a cassette, it's cheaper to produce. You can put it in your pocket. You can have a little download code.
It's nostalgic.
It's just something for people to have. Yeah, like, I think a lot of people buy cassettes that don't have cassette players.
I can't wait. I want to keep this, and like 10 years from now,
but we
maybe
have a
5
band
years from now,
coming up that we're recording in May, and they're like, said, hey, we're gonna do this through CD Baby. This is where all this is coming out, and they're like, can we do tapes? And we're like, I guess, sure, yeah. Like, if they think they want tapes and they're gonna move tapes, then
I have
absolutely.
a double deck cassette. If anybody wants to pay me to duplicate, I can do that. VHS. Hey, so real quick here, just because I know we got about 10 to 15 minutes here to wrap up. I always like to hit this here before we finish. The pitfall question, right? So I'm a musician who's creating audio video content, and I'm going to post online to help people get to know my act better. Where am I most likely to screw this up? Farnell, I'll start with you.
I mean, there's plenty of things. I feel like just marketing to musicians nowadays, a lot of times all of that shit is a pitfall. Buy this, do this. You could get more views by doing this. So then they want you to pay for the SoundCloud Pro. You got a YouTube Red. You got to pay for the Bandcamp Pro. You got to do the CD Baby Distribution Pro. You got to pay for your Pro Information Performance Rights Organization, because that's very important, as well as copyright. So now the pitfall is just getting sucked in trying to do everything at once. And I feel like sometimes you just got to do it as you go. Like, hey, pay for what you can. Hey, guess what? You can't pay for the CD Baby $100 distribution album, but you could go to DistroKid and pay for the, for putting as many records out in a year. I mean, I feel like you just have to function and move within your budget and your means. And like I said, building a team around you. But it's many of pitfalls. And I feel like those industry magazines, all of that stuff, man, that stuff will have you broke and not making any music. That's just me.
Yeah, I'll say, don't think you're going to make any money out of it. If you do, that's awesome. But, if you're planning to make money as a band, be a drug dealer. You're going to, straight up.
Man, that's almost as good as be awesome.
But
be a drug dealer.
People do think that. They're like, hey, I got this record, and you put it on CD Baby. When am I getting my first check? And I'm like, did you have somebody to buy your record? Do you even have friends? Do you even have, what?
Do you even have friends?
I'm like, have you built up anything? You just can't go in your room and record and think you're just going to automatically make money. And I feel like so many musicians are into that, and they
even getting a record label deal, there's household record label names that they're not going to give you an advance. They're not going to pay you to record. They're not going to get you a tour manager. So even if you get signed to them, it's kind of on you. Just regular pitfalls is getting burnt out. I think I'm very lucky to have started this with my friend Louis, because there's tons of times where I'll be like, I'm out. I'm not doing this shit anymore. I'm tired of bands. They don't respond to emails. They don't show up. They fucking move to LA all the time. And he's like, all right, you're right. I'll take this over. And then he'll come to me. He's like, I'm not doing this shit anymore. So, find a crew. Just, slow and steady. Stay with what you can afford. Don't be afraid to make bad stuff. And if you just keep doing it, you're not only going to get better, you're going to find other people who want to help you. And someday you're going to be able to sit on stage at the Doug Fir and get a free water. So it's all worth it.
Yeah, right on.
You know what? I'm just going to reinforce what you guys said. Just pitfalls is keeping yourself from doing something because, I don't have this or I don't have that or whatever. Use the heck out of whatever you have, whether it's your phone recorder or your 4-track cassette or, everybody starts somewhere. And we're all, I think as musicians, we're always in the process. It's not like a place where you arrive. It's like this lifelong journey, of you just keep going the right direction, moving forward. And like I said, don't let things stop you from, like I said, use the heck out of what you have, and you will progress, and you will get better at everything you're doing.
True. Right on. Hey, real quick, big hand for our 3 panelists today. Appreciate you guys coming out on a Sunday. One last DIY idea for you if you're trying to record a show video on the cheap. Kevin and I are in a band together that actually makes a pretty good amount of money, and we did one video 10 years ago, and that's all we ever did. And we did it like this. We got hooked up to multi-track recording on the board at the Aladdin where we were playing, and we went to, 5 or 6 friends.
Well, what happened was we actually hired a video company, and they backed out at the last...
Yeah.
So
I left that
so we're like, oh crap, we got to capitalize on the situation. It was like
we knew we had a sold out show. We wanted to recapture. We had no demo. Yeah.
So we just had our friends, I think we bought $200 HD cameras that we put on side of stage, and had a couple of people out in the audience shooting.
You're here. You're here. You're behind the camera.
This thing was all mixed matched. You could reshot different, but. But you know what? The important thing is we just use what we had, and it wasn't about having the video production be perfect. It's and that was the
10 years ago, the one demo, So anyway, the point being is that even when you don't have any money, there is a way. You just kind of have to get creative about it, and don't be afraid to enlist your friends with phones, because sometimes that's all you got.
Also, technologically, we have access to crazy stuff right now for so little money. just even your smartphone, all the stuff that your smartphone does,
I still have my old iPhone.
GarageBand, right?
I still have my old iPhone and my current iPhone, and I'm like, I could do multi-camera, right? You gotta. I'm one of the most simplest person. I'm like, if whatever, the less you could do, I feel like you could put more time and energy into the music, and then, or you could have more time to really push to get your music out there. So if like, hey, if I have to hire Charlie to come or Todd G or someone to come and hold an extra camera, that's what I'm going to do, you know, and I'm going to chop it up, or I'm going to call my friend and be like, hey, can you help me with this? I'll help you with whatever you need. You need some shirts designed, you need some flyers, I could make you a nice Wix website, you know, like, you know, you're going to have to shake and grease a lot of hands and do a lot of bartering, because bartering still goes 100% these days. I mean, I barter for like, you know, I barter with all kind of people, and I love it.
So before we get out of here, I want to tell you about two things moving forward. One, make sure that you join the PDX Music Business Forum online. We not only it's on Facebook, but it's for groups. It works. So, but it's where we announce our upcoming sessions like this, and it's also a place where we post content from time to time. The other thing I want to let you know about really quickly, you'll be going to be hearing about in the months and sort of year ahead, is an organization called Music Portland. And if you haven't heard about this, really keep an eye out for it. This is one of the brainchilds of Chris here from Vortex and a lot of the community leaders, and I have the pleasure of being a part of it. And what we're trying to do is essentially build an economic development force around the local music scene, everything from musicians, providers, venues, and so on and so forth, engaging with community government, working on things like, you know, parking zones, with the tourism department to promote the local music scene and such. So I ask you, as you start to see information come out about Music Portland, you might see surveys. Those are very important, because what we do is we do surveys. We take that information. We're going to go to the city and say, hey, look, local musicians want loading zones, right? Or whatever it is. So just a little soft pitch there to keep an eye out for Music Portland, because you will see more about that in the months and the year ahead on that. Thank you again to the Doug Fur for letting us use the spot today. We can hang out here and network for a bit. I could use a little help clearing off the stage, because we have a band loading in here at 3 or 3:30. So again, thanks everyone. Thanks to our panelists, and have a good one.